Welcome back to my 3-part series on the history of the DCEU. If you haven't seen the first part of this series where I talk about the early attempts to start the DCEU, check that out. But today, I'm talking about Zack Snyder's plans for the franchise. And where we last left off, WB was looking at Man of Steel as the perfect start to their cinematic universe. It's important to keep in mind how much of a slam dunk Man of Steel seemed to WB. Whether or not you liked the movie, the deck was definitely stacked in its favor. It was released the year after the Dark Knight trilogy ended, meaning they wouldn't have to deal with having two continuities. Also, it was a Superman reboot, and I don't think there's a single project more ideal for launching a DC cinematic universe than a Superman reboot. On top of that, pretty much everyone that WB associated with making good DC movies was behind it. David S. Goyer was the writer of the movie, having previously co-written Batman Begins and co-writing the stories for The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. He also wrote a script for an unproduced Flash movie and produced a script called Green Arrow Escape from Supermax, though that likely was supposed to take place in the Mortalverse and it too was never realized. Christopher Nolan, the director and co-writer for all 3 Dark Knight movies, was an executive producer and wrote the story with Goyer. And Zack Snyder, who had previously directed Watchmen, was signed on as director. Watchmen hadn't been a ginormous success, but it was praised by its direction. Not to mention that the initial idea that Goyer had pitched to WB was to do to Superman what they had previously done to Batman with the Dark Knight movies. Put the character in the real world and look at the story from a realistic point of view. And obviously the Dark Knight movies had done well, so why wouldn't this work too? In 2012, after shooting had wrapped on Man of Steel, Will Beall was hired to write the script for a Justice League movie. At this point, the studio was working on some solo movies they were hoping would come out in the next few years, including a Flash movie from the writers of Green Lantern and a Wonder Woman movie helmed by Patty Jenkins. Eventually, the Flash movie as it was cancelled and Patty Jenkins would leave Wonder Woman only to come back to it later. Will Beall's script was not well received by Warner Brothers. The script involved the Justice League forming and fighting Darkseid arriving on Earth. A key part of the script involves Superman seeing a future where Darkseid has conquered Earth and the Flash using time travel to stop that from happening. If you're familiar at all with Zack Snyder's plans for Justice League, this will sound very familiar. Superman would also become evil and there would have been a Batman vs. Superman fight. The main problem was that this script tried to fit in too much. The script was essentially the cliff notes of Goyer and Snyder's later plans for the franchise. Since WB liked David S. Goyer's take on Superman, they hired him to rewrite the Justice League script. The details around this period are a bit fuzzy, but basically by the end it was decided that the Will Beall script served better as a sequel to a first Justice League movie, with some of its elements being incorporated into a first Justice League movie showing its team assembling and fighting Steppenwolf as a precursor to Darkseid coming in the sequel. The idea also came about to use a Man of Steel sequel as an opportunity to do a precursor to Justice League, introducing Batman and other characters in the world and fitting in the Batman vs. Superman fight from Beall's script, while also planting seeds for the Justice League. And just like that, the very first plan for the DCEU was made by Goyer. They'd do a Batman v Superman movie planting the seeds of Justice League, a Justice League movie of the team forming and fighting Steppenwolf, and a Justice League sequel where the team fights Darkseid and saves the world with time travel. They also changed the lineup for the League a bit. Beall's lineup included Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Green Arrow, Aquaman, the John Stewart Green Lantern, and Hawkman. But Goyer's team started as Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and Cyborg, mimicking the New 52 lineup, with the plan being that they would introduce a Green Lantern to the team, but in a sequel to Justice League rather than having him be a founding member. Zack Snyder signed on to direct the Man of Steel follow-up and Justice League, which led to him being a primary creative force behind the movie alongside Goyer. At this point, Warner Brothers had started development on other movies for the DCEU as well, and in 2014 they announced their slate for the DCEU. In 2016, Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, written by Goyer and directed by Snyder, and Suicide Squad, written and directed by David Ayer, would come to theaters. In 2017, Wonder Woman, which had not yet found a director, would be coming out alongside Justice League Part 1, directed by Zack Snyder. Announced for 2018 were The Flash and Aquaman. For 2019, Shazam and Justice League Part 2, and for 2020's Cyborg and Green Lantern. It was also announced that The Batman, starring Ben Affleck, and a more direct sequel to Man of Steel were also in development for release at some point, presumably wherever room would open up on the slate in the coming years. So with this in place, work by Goyer and Snyder would begin with Batman v Superman script and further development happening with the Justice League movies. It was somewhere along this point that it was decided that there would actually be 3 Justice League movies, not 2, with Justice League 2 ending on a cliffhanger of Darkseid taking over Earth, and Justice League 3 showing the time travel fixing everything. I'm kind of glad I pushed off this history of DCEU because just a week or so, storyboards have come public that show the plans for Justice League 2 or 3, or as the storyboards refer to them, Justice League 2 and 2A. So now I can tell a more accurate tale, though keep in mind these storyboards were made in 2015 and do not show the final plans. There were multiple differences. For example, a large part of the Justice League trilogy would have revolved around a love triangle between Clark, Lois, and Bruce, but this was taken out before the first Justice League movie was filmed, unless they decide to surprise us with it in the Snyder Cut, so that's not happening in the sequels. Also, the cast in the Nightmare world is different between storyboards and reality. The storyboards include Deadshot, who would be taken out, and do not include either Deathstroke or Joker. In fact, none of the Justice League movies were originally supposed to have these characters. Deathstroke would be added before filming, possibly as a replacement for Deadshot once Deathstroke became the villain of the Batman, and Joker was actually added to the Snyder Cut due to additional filming in late 2020. Also, Green Lantern doesn't show up until the 3rd movie in this one, but it's been documented that the final plans included Green Lantern joining in Justice League 2, and there being cameos of some kind in Justice League 1. There were also a few villains that were planned to appear in the DC movies that have since evolved past the versions seen in the storyboards, coming back to the Justice League movies. So, you can read the storyboards to get the full picture, but essentially, Justice League 2 would feature Lex assembling a Legion of Doom to crack the anti-life equation and bring Darkseid to Earth, with the Legion including Dr. Maru from Wonder Woman, Ocean Master and Black Manta from Aquaman, the Riddler, who was planned to appear in The Batman at this point, and Captain Cold, who was planned to be a villain in The Flash at the time. Lex would be successful, but then Darkseid would turn on him. He would kill Lois before Superman could arrive to save her, weakening his will to the point that Darkseid could use the anti-life equation to turn Superman evil and take over the world. Justice League 3 would start in the nightmare we saw in BVS, with a group of survivors including Batman, Green Lantern, Cyborg, Mira, and the aforementioned others dying to send the Flash back in time to the events of the previous movie, with Barry convincing Bruce to talk to Lois, who has been unraveling Lex's plan, and strategize. In this version, Bruce sacrifices himself to save Lois so that Superman can get them in time to cause Darkseid to retreat and save the League. The movie would end with humans, Atlanteans, and Amazonians all joining together with the Justice League to stop Darkseid's invasion. There would also be a flash forward of Lois and Clark's son, who at this point was biologically Lois and Bruce's, growing up to be the next Batman. But all of this went south. A lot of people see Justice League as the point where these plans went out the window, but I see Batman v Superman as the real turning point. How? Well, let's talk about it. Today, in the 3rd and final chapter of this trilogy on the history of the DCEU. Don't forget to subscribe for daily videos on the franchise you love, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.